So I wanted to jump to a news story. I figured each week, if there's something worth talking about as far as gaming news, we could bring it up. So I came across an article entitled, China's buying up Japanese game studios. This was on the front internet page of the Guardian newspaper uh, earlier this week, and I figured, hey, it's very rare that you get Japanese gaming news front and center on an international news site. So, just a brief summary, because I did want to get your take on this. Basically, there's a company called NetEase from China going into Japan and buying up Japanese game studios and kind of targeting the top developers from the 80s and 90s who are now kind of in their 60s and 70s and bringing their teams. I don't want to say bring their teams on board, but basically giving them, investment capital. And one of the positives, according to the article, was that they are actually paying their employees better than has been the case in strictly Japanese game companies. So less grind, better pay. So that was a positive.
Mm.
The question that came out of it was, how long will the Chinese make these investments? What kind of profit are they expecting to turn? And if it doesn't work out, if it's not as profitable, will they pull back? And will the next generation who's working under these guys who were popular in the 80s and 90s and who were the big developers, will they have a chance to grow in this better environment? But I think more broadly, it's kind of interesting. Like, I think this is a play to a degree, like we're seeing with, and a much more minor financially, but Saudi Arabia coming in and buying up sports properties and trying to, extract as much profit as possible. Is Japanese gaming one of those things that can exist outside of a Japanese company running it? And can it have that kind of global appeal that investors want? So,
Um, it depends, to be honest with you, because I think that it can be done. It just depends on who the leaders are, right? So, um, China buying up a bunch of Japanese developers it doesn't sound like a bad idea. It just sounds like they're just trying to dip their toes into a market that they feel that is lucrative. However, I think because because the world is so information driven now, everyone feels like they know everything and everyone feels like they have I would say everyone has so much information at their fingertips. A lot of people feel like they know certain things. So a lot of gamers would probably most likely be afraid that China will, because one thing that I always hear whenever Japanese markets gets tampered with from another country is censorship. That's the first thing. Censorship is always usually the first thing that pops up in an argument because a lot of gamers that I know that play Japanese video games, that's the one reason why they go there is because the censorship isn't so, crazy. And from what we know from China is, so far is like they like to have a lot of control. So ultimately, from my perspective, I think it's just probably them trying to dip their toes into a market and, they feel like the Japanese video game development is lucrative. But I think a lot of overseas gamers are probably going to be biting their bottom lips, scared about certain changes.
yeah. And it was, it was interesting. Like, they didn't give any specific examples as far as, what kinds of games are they investing in or what are these companies that they've purchased producing. But obviously, they're not going to buy Nintendo.
No,
So they're
no.
not aiming at that kind of global player. The article did talk about how the Chinese gaming market is radically different. It's basically internet cafe type free to play games or mobile games with those free to play multiplayer mechanics. And then, of course, in China, gaming time is constrained by the government. You know,
Yeah.
kids can't play for, I don't know what it is, more than 3 hours
What
or
is I
something
think
like
I think the limit is what, 2 hours a week or something like that. It was something crazy.
that. It was like something like an hour to 2 hours on a school night, and then you get 3 hours on weekends and national holidays.
Right.
But I guess like when I was thinking about it, so they're not going to buy Nintendo or Capcom, but just for argument's sake, let's say a foreign investor comes in and buys, I don't know, Falcom or
God, no.
NIS or
Please don't scare me like this.
well, but what I'm saying, I guess my point is like, could a huge injection of capital into that level of company
Mhm.
grow the global audience for a Falcom game or an NIS game? Because to me, I think that audience is pretty locked in.
Yeah. Yeah, especially Falcom, Nipponichi Software, those kind of companies, they already have their fan base. But if an investor wants to plug more money into a company, they would definitely need to make some changes for a more broader appeal. Especially and especially a lot of investors, they want to invest in worlds. They want to grab everybody. Falcom right now knows who their customers are. Nipponichi knows who their customers are, and they've been catering to those customers for years. Now, the problem is when you run a corporation, you can't only cater to those people. Unfortunately, if you want to grow a company, you have to somehow broaden those horizons. You have to cater to more than what you're catering to now. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think like the doomsday scenario is, let's say they bought that type of company and they're like, hey, what is profitable? Oh, like let's do something like FIFA Ultimate Team, but for JRPGs, or Capcom is selling fighters, in Street Fighter. We're going to sell other people that you could bring into your party. Like, you don't want them to chop it up and monetize it like that. But on the other hand, I don't see people putting down a Madden and picking up Disgaea or something like that. So we'll see what
But
happens.
I mean, the today's gaming market has surprised me. I will say that for sure. I mean, you could take some of those IPs and turn them into gotcha games. I mean, gotcha games make tons of money. I'm not even gonna lie, I've fallen into the trap myself on some occasions. But I will say, some people, they invest in gotcha games, and then you have streamers who influence that. So let's let's cross our fingers and hope that doesn't happen. Especially not to Falcom, because I love Falcom.
Yeah, well, actually, when you were talking about that, kind of the game, what I think it's called Genshin Impact, comes to
Oh
mind.
yeah.
And if I
Mhm.
recall, that was like a Chinese developed game that really appealed to the kind of anime Japanese aesthetic and was popular with kind of the crowds that we're talking about. I don't know if that's a gotcha game. I've never played it, but I think that was very successful.
It is very successful. It is a Chinese. Is it Chinese or is it Korean? It's one of those. But it did adopt the gotcha game system. But what it did was, which I thought was actually very creative, it took the fundamentals of what made Breath of the Wild so popular and it turned into a gotcha game.
Oh,
So
cool.
yeah, that's basically what it is.
Interesting. All right. I haven't had a chance to look at it, but maybe one of these
Don't
days.
don't look at it. It does look appealing, but it'll sap you. Don't do it.